Competitive by Schlock.
Roses are red, violence is cool, schlock is awesome, and so are you. That's a poem. That's a poem I wrote for you. For all of you out there, and especially you, Chris. I'm just joking. I think ChatGPT came up with that. Slightly modified. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. And we are here to wish you a happy Valentine's Day with a very gory movie, the 2009 remake, I think, a side sequel of My Bloody Valentine in 3D, a very deceptive title because whenever something says 3D behind it, you got to assume it's the third in a series, Friday the 13th 3D Jaws,
right. 3D,
right? So, but no, it is a remake. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember, Chris. I can't. Have you seen the original?
I have. It's one of my favorite slashers.
See, I can't remember if I've seen the original or not.
If you haven't, or you don't remember if you have, you need to seek it out because it is.
Would I remember it?
Amazing.
Well, so perhaps it's just this one has just stuck in my mind so well as very authentic in a way. Chris, I got a question for you that's really important. When was the last like big slasher movie that you can remember? Like that had a theatrical release, and how long ago do you think that was?
I mean, right around this time, maybe. I can't think of another one, but there were several that came out. Probably not, but it might have been. I mean, I want to say like about a decade ago is probably the last time that something, besides like the reboots of franchises like your Halloweens or your Screams, right? We're not counting those.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I guess those count because what I was kind of thinking was horror is very big right now. I think the genre is alive and well, and we're getting a lot of art house horror or more creepy horror.
Yeah, or like hybrids of like part slasher, part something else. Yeah.
Yeah, and but it seemed like for a while we just had a string maybe from the first Scream movie up until My Bloody Valentine, where we had a string of like, I guess, original slasher movies.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't original, it's a remake, but it's not like a reboot of a super famous property. Like Scream or Halloween were huge when they came out. I mean, just,
But we also got,
icons.
I think, Valentine, Urban Legends, like the See No Evil, your lower tier ones, See No Evil. There's one called like Venom. Like a lot of them were starring like wrestlers, I think.
Right.
So
viable avenue.
It just seems like there aren't slashers today in the same way. But maybe I'm wrong. The new Scream is coming out. I mean, we had Halloween Kills.
You still have all your big properties, but like you don't see as many the horror movies that blow up that are original or at least remakes of lesser known films. Yeah, they're different kind of horror that's really blowing up right now. So so
in 2013, I think, whenever the Friday the 13th remake came out, I think that was kind of a vibe killer for that sort of like a lot of bigger slasher movies,
felt like
because it didn't do very well.
Yeah, so, I mean, there just hasn't been like a real new original slasher. I'm sure there are some great ones out there that are flying under the radar or we just haven't heard of, but like ones that really hit that cultural button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I just wanted to pontificate on that for a second. I feel like I'm been slightly corrected with your Screams and your Halloweens and your whatnot.
But I mean, but beyond that, there's not. And I miss a good slasher. I'd like an original slasher to just blow up. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and I'll get a little more into this later, I think, about kind of why my mind went to here. But let's get on with the show. What we do here is we talk about what we like and what we don't like about these movies, the good and the bad. Then we talk about the schlock. We just kind of the overall arching schlockiness of these movies, what they're about, what caught our eye, what things are interesting. And I need to warn you that we are going to spoil this movie. And I would say that this movie, probably out of most of them that we've done, like that, this one definitely deserves a spoiler. Yeah,
there's a twist. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want us to ruin it for you, just pause and go watch it, and then come back and join us.
Go watch it. Yeah. But first we start off with a little thing called Web of Schlock. We like to talk about who's in these movies, who made them, and where they're connected to things that we've seen before.
Well, let's start behind the scenes with the writer and director. So one of the writers on it, his name is Todd Farmer. He actually plays the truck driver in the infamous scene in this movie. So he has a cameo. He wrote this. He also wrote Drive Angry a couple years later. His first screenplay writing credit is Jason X.
Oh, really?
Yep. So
okay,
he's got some he's done
slashers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now the director is Patrick Lussier. I'm probably butchering his last name. So, like any good slasher, he started out with a part 3. He directed The Prophecy Part 3. Have you seen any of the prophecies?
I haven't. Do they have Christopher Walken in them?
They do.
Yeah, gotta watch those.
Yeah, Prophecy 3, The Ascent. Then he went on to direct Dracula 2000.
Oh, yeah, that kind of sucked, but we got to do that someday, because I do think that movie is special in some unique ways.
And then Dracula 2000, he followed it up with Dracula 2, Dracula 3, White Noise 2, then My Bloody Valentine, then Drive Angry, and he did an episode of the Purge TV show. He's still working, still kicking it.
So pretty prolific horror writer, scary movie writer.
Yeah, awesome. Some straight to video stuff, some sequels, some originals, and now let's move on to the cast. What a cast! Jamie King, Sin City, The Spirit, this. So many different things. Still working today. We got Kerr Smith, who played the sheriff. He was in Final Destination.
Okay, first one.
And then first one. Okay. And then Dawson's Creek. And then that brings us to Dean Winchester. I mean Jensen Ackles, who was also in Dawson's Creek, I believe, if I remember correctly. And then
look at that smoldering look.
Yeah, in a little show called Supernatural for 15 seasons. I am a diehard Dean Winchester, Jensen Ackles fan. So I had never seen this movie before, and I didn't really look into it a whole lot before I started watching it. And I was probably playing on my phone during the credits, so I look up and I see Jensen here, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome.
I haven't seen Supernatural because I'm afraid it's like a WB sexy teens with dumb problems show. How would you compare that movie to this movie? Or not movie, series to this movie?
I love Supernatural. With 15 seasons, it is up and down. There are some much better seasons than others. I don't think what you think it is. There's probably a little bit of that in there, but I would say that it's more like I don't know, Scooby-Doo meets X-Files with a lot of action.
That's the best pitch I think I've heard for that.
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo makes X-Files. I'm in. Let's do it.
The first couple seasons are amazing. And then it gets a little rocky, and then it kind of has some really good seasons and some other ones. And it's all compelling because the leads are so watchable. I could talk all day about Supernatural. I won't. Toward the end, there's a little bit of jumping the shark, but in a fun, good way where they're becoming a little more self-aware. But what do you do after 15 seasons?
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I love me some Supernatural, man. So seeing him in here was amazing. There are other actors in here like Tom Atkins, who played Burke. He was in Halloween 3. He was in The Fog. He was in Night of the Creeps. Just tons of. He was the older sheriff in the beginning in this movie.
Okay,
but
yeah.
You've seen him in tons of things. Great character actors like that. So, is there anyone you want to talk about in this, or just?
No, I didn't know anyone in this movie. Well, there's the one guy who's like the superintendent of the mine or whatever. He's a very familiar face, but I don't know the actor's name.
Lots of those in this. A lot of But let's get into the good and the bad, man. You want to start, or you want me to start?
Yeah. So good. I'll start. I really liked this movie. I don't think it was like an amazing movie, but I think for what they were trying to do, I think they hit the mark. This movie is a great throwback to 80s slasher movies. Like, it is just totally gory, totally brutal, just pulling no punches in like its kills. It had a great body count in it. Like, so if you're looking for that genre, right, that style of movie, but you're looking for something more updated, this is a great movie for that. I saw it when it came out in theaters. So
you saw it in 3D?
I saw it in 3D.
Oh, and man, I'm jealous.
I think this is probably the most fun use of 3D I've ever seen in a movie. Like, there's always like that weird thing in 3D where they go like, you, and they like point at the camera, and it's like really obvious that they're like trying to make it suitable for 3D. And it feels like it's always forced in there in a way. This movie, it just does not care. It's like, we are going to do stuff purely for 3D. Like during the hotel killing scene where the girl like grabs the bed frame and like puts it up in front of her, the wire bed frame, and he's like stabbing with the pickaxe. I mean, that is like the dumbest thing you could absolutely do. Like that's just so stupid for her to do. It's so dumb. Like, I can't hardly stand how stupid of like an action that is. But it's in the movie purely to show the pickaxe, like king, 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 going back and forth. And you know what? I can forgive it because that is awesome. I love the 3D in this movie. It's totally unapologetic. And you get the bang for your buck out of that. And also, my last really big good is the pickaxe. I'm a sucker for a pickaxe, man. Like, whenever I play D&D or Skyrim, I always grab a pickaxe. And Skyrim, the video game, it's not even like a usable weapon, but you can hit things with it. So I'd take it and hit things with it. I love pickaxes. I don't know why. So I'm down with it. I like the gas mask. I just remember that, like, I feel like if you're going to make a slasher, I mean, this movie is obviously, it's trying to cash in on the holiday slasher craze, right? That started with Halloween and then went on with Friday the 13th. And now they're just trying to pick like all of these different days on the calendar to get a slasher.
Right. Silent Night, Deadly Night, Leprechaun. I mean,
Right. Like, you have to, what you need a good weapon and you need a good mask. Like, those are the things that you need to get. I think that Halloween and Friday the 13th do it the best. And maybe we can talk about that someday, their use of the mask. But here, as far as just making a fun slasher movie, I think that they found a great combo. My bad is very extensive, so I'll try to get through it. But the intro, this movie, it just starts right in with this huge information dump. And granted, it looks cool because it has like all the 3D swirling of the newspaper articles. But man, that is just so much at the beginning. It's such a convoluted background and backstory to what the actual movie is. Like I had to like go backward and watch it like 3 or 4 times just to like really pick up on what's going on. Like, okay, who's who, what's going on here? Who are these people? And yeah, it was just so weird that the pacing in the movie is just awful. It takes like 20 minutes before our actual movie gets started. So I'd like to talk about that more in Schlock maybe. But my next bad is that it has the Saw reveal. Do you know what year Saw came out? Was it 2006? I think it's like 2004.
No, it's earlier than that. 2003?
2003 or 4, I think. And so
yeah, like, I think it is like 2003.
You know, Saw was a big phenomenon in this idea
2004.
Of the last 5 or 10 minutes of the movie where they do a big reveal and like, this is what you've actually been seeing the whole time, right?
Right.
And it did that. And so I felt like that was probably a little cliche for the time period and probably a little shoehorned in to fit that cliche. And I don't feel like there was enough misdirection or good misdirection.
It was completely a cheat, but I'll complain about that when I do bad.
Yeah. And maybe we'll move that into Schlock. Just because there's so much to talk about there. So let's get on to your good and bad, and then we can tear this thing apart.
Yeah, and you know what? Well, we might run a little long tonight, but it's a Valentine's Day special. So
special. Yeah.
More of us. What else do you want for Valentine's Day? My number one good, Jensen Ackles. It's a cool killer. It's a cool idea for a slasher villain. He looks scary. He's got a pick. The weapon is cool. The mask is cool.
Yeah,
it fits in the area because of the coal mine. It's cool. My third good is I wrote gory and bloody. This is a bloody Valentine. Like they do not skimp on the horror, but it doesn't feel like gratuitous in like a hostile sort of way.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like gore porn,
right? It still feels like a slasher that just doesn't shy away from the gore, but it's not like it's not relishing it either. It's just that that perfect level of like, oh man, this is gory and bloody. And you know, so sometimes they stay on it and they show you the really gross shot, and sometimes they cut away. Right. And a lot of movies now, they always cut away, or in something more like Hostel, they never cut away. And you're like, there's a balance. And I think this movie hit that gore balance almost perfect.
Yeah.
Like I loved how violent this movie was. It was just fun. There was a fun in it. Like sometimes back to Hostel and that sort of thing, some of that is just so over the top and gross that it takes the fun out of a horror movie, out of the slasher movie. It makes it less of a carnival ride or a haunted house that you're going to, and just like, oh, I don't want to watch this. I don't like how this makes me feel. Whereas this, there's still, even though it's super gross and super gory, there's still a fun spirit about it, right? Which it is, I think, goes back to like one of the core fundamentals of a ghost story or a horror story. You know, like you think about a campfire, you think of, you know, Christmas time, you're all sitting around the fire and like you're supposed to creep them out. You're supposed to tell them a story that gets them, that keeps them up, but it's done in a spirit of fun and community. So those are my good. So much bad. I liked this movie. I did not like it as much as you did. The 3D shots I dug that they were unabashed about it, that they just like, you know what, that's what this is, because they don't look as cool not 3D. They still look kind of cool, but they don't look as cool not 3D. And there are so many of them in this. So dating it is not quite the right word I'm looking for. But
it just doesn't transfer well.
Thank you. It just doesn't transfer well. So it's like listening to one of your favorite songs on vinyl, but the vinyl is not really good. It's like super scratched, like an old scratched record. And you're like, that's still awesome, but like, okay. To get into Schlock, I'll just go to my big main bad. This has nothing to do with Valentine's Day.
No.
And I hate that. I'm like, why would you do this? And like, why is he putting him in hearts and heart-shaped boxes? And why does it happen on Valentine's Day? And then there's no connection to any of it. It's just this guy who lost his mind in the mind. And he's a cool guy, but you don't need this to happen at Valentine's Day. I think it would be stronger if it didn't. That being said, if you watch the original, it's two separate ideas, but they combine them perfectly. It's the same thing, but it makes total sense. And they only did two or three things different in the original movie that they excised from this update. And it totally severed the connection between Valentine's Day and this killer and the coal mine town.
Yeah.
And that totally threw me off and took me out of the movie. I'm like, oh, why didn't you keep that bit from the original? Because they had it perfect there.
Well, are you ready to move on to Schlock?
Yes.
Because let's get into this a little bit. That whole intro. So you're right. It sort of just so happens to take place on Valentine's Day. The mine blows up or whatever, and then a year later, Henry, I think his name is, comes out of the coma. It's on Valentine's Day, and he kills all these people, and then it's like, then it does another time jump
10 years
into the future, and it's on Valentine's Day again. And that's like the biggest connection. Whereas in the original, so I was just reading the synopsis, it's that the mine accident happened because they were trying to like get to a Valentine's Day dance or something.
Okay,
and he's like, no more Valentine's Day.
I will run it through you. It's got a very kind of Footloose kind of feel where it's like, there's no dancing anymore. So the town in the original is called Valentine Falls. And so since Valentine's in the name, the whole town does these giant Valentine's Day celebrations, right? That makes sense. That tracks. Okay, it's a small town and they happen to have Valentine in the name. So once a year, they throw these big parties. It's also a mining town. So there's a big party on Valentine's Day, and these managers who are overseeing them decide to get to the party earlier, and so they don't check the lines, and so then there's an explosion, and the only person to survive is the guy who then next Valentine's Day goes on a killing spree. But it makes sense because he's mad at them for the Valentine's Day celebration for what happened to him. Right, so there's that connection, and then he's using that Valentine's Day from the beginning, and it doesn't feel tacked on. It feels like, okay, yes, he's a guy in a cool coal miner outfit with a miner weapon, but it all comes back to the Valentine's Day dance. And so then the movie starts, the original movie starts with them. It's been like 20 years or so since they've had a Valentine's Day dance, and this guy was in a psych ward somewhere, and so they're like, okay, finally we're moving on. The youth who are now working at the mine, they want to have this dance, they want to celebrate because they're all young and in a small town, and then this killer starts coming in, and it's just perfect. Like, they also do an ensemble movie in the first one perfectly, where this one, it feels like you don't know who the main character is half the time. You're following this person, you're following that person, you're doing this, you're doing that. Like, it should be, it should be Jensen Ackles, but you don't know who the main character is. They disappear, There are too many characters, there are too many threads going on that don't interconnect, whereas in the original movie they interconnect perfectly.
Yeah, so in this I feel like right, there's no connection to Valentine's. I think that they really needed to hit up this sort of love triangle idea, and maybe not even love triangle. The fact that like maybe everybody is like not being true to each other, like they've all screwed each other over, like the affections of one another, and that's why like Valentine's Day is like such a big deal, is because like no one's actually acting like they're in love with each other, you know, based on their actions. I think they really could have tied that together a lot more. But like all of what you explained, that's a huge problem for me. I think even in both movies, I think that it's a very convoluted backstory just to get okay, we got to get onto a holiday and we got to get a cool mask and a cool weapon. And so we got to do just this really crazy setup. Look, and even this in the movie original really suffers for it. Like all of that stuff should have happened off screen and been like folklore about the town.
And in the original, most of it is folklore and happens off screen.
Like they needed a cold open where like so right after the open with all of the newspaper articles, they have Henry or Harry, is it Harry? In Harry. The hospital. And he's like remembering what happened between him and Tom. That needed to be like the cold open for the movie. And then the newspaper stuff and all the audio clips, that needed to be the opening credits for the movie, so that we could get into like
this movie has too many openings.
Yeah. And honestly, after Harry wakes up and he goes ham on the town, honestly, that's the movie I want to see.
That's what the movie should have been. It should have been like a Halloween thing. It didn't need to go 10 years later. So you're right. It is convoluted to get a holiday and a cool mask and a cool weapon. But in the original, they pull it off seamlessly. You're like, this shouldn't work, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, they don't, and it suffers. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the twist. I hated it because it was a cheat, and I don't know.
They didn't do enough to create the misdirection. I think they were really banking on the idea that people were afraid that Harry was actually back, but they didn't do enough to misdirect us. I feel like we have this love triangle going, and they do a misdirect right at the very end where they're saying like, you know, maybe it's the sheriff, because we have this scene where, let's pull up the boxes of chocolates, right? Where our main girl, she goes into his her husband's stabbing cabin, and she finds a box of chocolates that has the picture of her and her old boyfriend in it. And then she finds this whole cupboard full of boxes. And I don't think that's ever explained. And then our main guy, Tom, he's trying to convince her that no, your husband, the sheriff, he's the one doing this. And they just throw that in too little too late to do a proper misdirection. Now, I'll admit, when I first saw it, I didn't realize at all that it was Tom, that he was actually just crazy. But like, I don't know. I feel like this could have been more of like a Scream type movie where they're just trying to figure out who's the killer, right. Not necessarily two killers, but just that like there's a person here who is like killing in the name of this legend that we have, and we have to find out who it is. And is it you, and everyone's a bit of a suspect.
Totally. The problem I have is that we see our main guy in the same scene with the killer multiple times. We can pull up the hero meets villain picture,
which I'm not actually. I don't hate that.
I hate the execution of it. I don't hate the idea of it. I just don't think they did it properly.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair play. So you're turning this into not just a slasher movie, but a mystery movie, kind of like Scream. Like, who is the killer? It's one of us. Okay, I get that he was in the psych ward, but they did not drop enough clues for when the reveal happens that I felt like, oh, I should have got that.
What I needed to be going, where have you been for the last 10 years? You disappeared. It was 7 years that he was away. And so it seems like maybe he would have been acting a little crazy for those 3 years prior. Like they just did not hit that well enough. There
should have been other hints that he was seeing things that weren't there. So fair play would be that when the reveal happened at the end that the main guy was actually the bad guy and he didn't even know it himself because he was split personality. I should have been like, oh, I should have got that. And I should have had like 4 or 5 clues pop in my head from the movie I just saw.
Sense.
Like, oh, it makes total sense that he was it. Instead, I said, well, no, you're cheating. You were cheating with clues because you're showing us. Then in flashback, you show us how he did it himself and he wasn't actually there. But I'm like, it's too little too late. You cheated. You showed us the killer with our hero with no way of knowing that it wasn't.
Well, I think that they had a very subtle problem that turned into a big problem. So we have that scene that we just saw, that picture that we just saw, where it shows him, he's in his regular clothes and he is looking at the killer, right, who's all dressed in black with the gas mask on and everything. And then when we do the reveal, I have a shot of this called Changing. It shows that he was actually legitimately wearing those clothes. Like it's hard to see here, but you see him like pulling off like a gator thing that he's wearing to like hide his identity. So it shows that in reality, he literally changed into this outfit and killed these people. And I think it would have worked a lot better if he never actually changed into the outfit. He just saw himself that way, because we get it a couple of times that first miner that he kills there in the scene where he gets locked in the cage, the guy turns around and is like, what do you want? Right? Like he recognizes him. Perhaps it's supposed to just be another miner, but maybe this idea that like the people who get killed do recognize him. They never say his name so they don't give it away to us, but they do recognize who it is. And then we find out in the end that like, no, he just took on that persona and saw himself in that way. And I think that would have been a lot better, because we get into all sorts of logical, like logistical problems.
He's not Superman. He can't just throw his clothes back on and off, and he keeps showing up like, hey, is everything okay? I think he's over here. Let's go this way.
Yeah.
And then how does he cut the guy's head off at the top of the mine? And then because he's below the people, right? And he's like, go back down.
Yeah. I mean, it creates a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So like you said, it feels very much like a cheat. But I did think they did something interesting in this movie with that sort of psychological aspect. And I'm thinking about it just because like recently we've done Friday the 13th, and we know that like later in that series, the essence of Jason Voorhees like transfers to other people. Okay. And then we've recently watched Halloween Ends, and I think maybe it's in some other Halloween movies, but this
Halloween
idea
Kills, I think, is where, or Halloween Ends.
Halloween Ends, where the idea that this evil transfers over into another person. And our main guy, it seems like by the end, he is Harry Warren.
Right.
The evil has transferred into him, because we really don't get a good answer or explanation as to why the original miner was like so evil and so brutal.
Right. It makes no sense because they took out the idea that in the original movie, he's mad at the mine, he's mad at the town, he's mad at the youth, he's mad at Valentine's, right?
And that makes sense, but that like this dude, he like rips people in half in that hospital. Like that hospital scene is bloody.
Yeah, like that's like more body count in that first scene. And of course you just see the aftermath of it. But yeah.
So what do you think the deal is with this transference of evil in slasher movies beyond making it so that you can have more sequels?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'll have to think about that. Like
this idea of trauma creating, like perpetuating evil or something. I don't know.
Sometimes it's trauma, but sometimes it's an unsuspecting victim who gets the transference of power. Like it's not necessarily trauma per se. It's more like bad luck, like wrong place, wrong time. I think part of it is the idea that evil can take on any form and live in anything and be anyone and anything. And there's no, evil doesn't look like just one thing, right? It can be anywhere. So I think, like having the sweet old lady possessed by a demon, there's something visceral about that, because you're taking tropes and stereotypes of innocence and you're subverting that, right? And you're also keeping you guessing, which is, again, part of the survival tactic of like, okay, I think this person's good and they look nice, but in the back of my head, I'm still watching him because
be wary,
lurking out there. Yeah, be wary. Yeah. So I think it just plays into the nature of horror. I want to touch one more thing on something this movie did really well, besides the gore and the blood and guts. Is just we can pull up the clean up on aisle 8 picture.
Where they're in the grocery store,
right? And this is just emblematic of what I'm talking about. It's not just a scene. They know how to pace and shoot horror. Like they know the jump scares, they know the false jump scares, they know the suspense, they know we know he's there, but they don't know he's there.
Yeah.
I just wish this movie was better. I wish it was written a little better. I wish the story linked up more. But for like the horror beats, they pull it off really well.
Yeah.
And so that, again, like you said, it's an enjoyable film to watch. I mean, so many of these movies we review, you're like, I like, The Wraith last week. Like, man, this could have been just amazing, and it just falls short, but there's still something, for lack of a better word, compelling about it, right?
Yeah.
So I did think that there's one way that you could have taken the Valentine's Day and the evil miner with the pickaxe and melded them together, and you just change the title of the film. All you got to do, you call the movie Be Mine.
Man, sequel. Let's do it.
Right?
Let's write the sequel.
I mean, that's all you need.
This movie, I think I totally forgot, because I normally say this, but the movie, it cost like $15 million to make. It made over $100 million. So it was a total success. And so I'm very surprised that there wasn't a sequel to it. So, hey, man, maybe they're looking for some writers. Yeah, we can do it. Yeah, we've seen them. We've seen a lot of schlock. We can do it. But I think we're running out of time. I mean, there's a ton more to talk about. I wish I would have seen more of Celine and Lewis, the dog, the hotel keeper and the dog. I wish I would have seen more of that. I wish. I do have one theory about this movie. I think that it is an episode of Supernatural, and I think Dean Winchester dreamed it, and then he wakes up and he tells his brother, I had this weird idea that I was in that old 80s slasher movie, My Bloody Valentine, but it was like in 3D and not quite as good, but oh man. So, if this is like a weird like dream from the character in Supernatural, it makes me love it even more. Hey man, however you got to fit it in. Well, that is all the time that we have for this week. Chris, tell me what we have coming up. We are getting back onto our schedule, so we're going to have another movie next week.
Yep.
What do you have for us?
The 90s horror comedy Parents.
Parents.
They just don't understand.
Yeah, they don't understand. They are scary. I think that's it. I think we're ready to sign out. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous, and we've been compelled by Schlock. We will see you next week.
Happy Valentine's Day!
Happy Valentine's Day!
Schlocky, schlock, schlock. Schlock. Schlock, schlocky, schlock, schlock. Schlock. I am compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Impelled by Schlock. Wait, no.